What in life is more powerful than knowing that you have kept someone here? That something that you have put out into the world is the change agent or the catalyst for someone to not choose that outcome.
So Lisa, thank you so much for joining Shift Talking. I want to say thank you again for understanding and being so flexible with me, considering I canceled the wrong Lisa before. So then we had to reschedule.
It is so okay. You know what? Crazier things have happened for sure. So I'm just glad it worked out. And I have to tell you, I just love the name of this podcast. It just makes me laugh every time, like in the best ways.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted it to be cheeky. And my background is such forensic psychology, and it's so rigid and boundaried and just so not like who I am, which is obviously why I don't practice it.
Yeah.
So there's that part that I'm finally like embracing who I am and how I speak and how I present and like really just the kind of voice I want to have in the space.
I love that for
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So tell me all about you. I, of course, have read your bios and such, but I want to hear from you. Yeah. What got you into this work and what keeps you in it?
Yeah, it's a long and complicated story, but I kind of have it down to the Spark Notes version at this point after having shared it so many times. So what I do more than anything is create content in the mental health space. And my lane, my little niche is suicide awareness and prevention in particular, and kind of like grief and loss is mixed in there obviously as well. So I've always created content, just not always in this space. So I've been a lot of different things. I'm an author. I've written a bunch of books. You had a column for like a dozen years. I'm a podcast host now as of 6 weeks ago. So I have...
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. And what I did for the longest time was talk about parenting. I talked about parenting in terms of like the perfectly imperfectness of it. Like we're all going to screw up. Like let's cut the whole notion of being perfect loose and let's just do the best we can. That kind of thing was my sweet spot for a really long time. We had, it was while our kids were growing up and going through school. And then I had an event happen in my life about 11 years ago, which is wild to me that it's been that long, but about 11 years ago. So let me back up a little bit because it's relevant. So I'm 56 now. When I was 10 years old, so 46 years ago, I lost my dad very suddenly. And I was told that my dad had died of a heart attack. Had no reason to question that at all. I mean, unfortunately, he was there one day. He was gone the next day. He was a healthy, active man, but he was a smoker and there was, heart disease in the family. And I was told that he had had a heart attack. And so it was not a tough narrative to swallow. So I did. And then 35 years later, I very much by accident found out that he had died by suicide.
How?
It's not.
Am I allowed to ask?
Oh my God! You can ask me absolutely anything that you want.
Okay.
My story is so out there in all the ways at this point in time, after so many years, that there's nothing about it that I won't talk about. But just so you know that.
Thank you.
So it's not like, wasn't this crazy like movie, like drama situation. It was not like that. It wasn't like, I found letters or I found tapes, or it wasn't like that. Yeah. So I was just with my husband. We live north of Boston and we were out for lunch, eating outdoors, little cafe. One of my cousins walked by who doesn't always live locally all year round. So I hadn't seen her for a while, a little older than I am. And she walked by, saw us, sat down, we're chatting, catching up about her kids, about my kids. And just as random as anything random could ever be, out of absolutely nowhere, in the context of like, how are the girls? We have 2 daughters. How are the girls? Did they have any of the same mental illness that your dad had? And I'm looking at, for anybody who's watching the video of our conversation right now, it was a blank face. I'm making like a blank face. I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. I had no idea that my father had been depressed. I had no idea that my father had any kind of mental illness. He was not that person. He didn't present that way. He was vibrant. He loved life. He was an outdoorsman. He was a total family guy. best dad in the world, always happy, had no idea, and neither did my mom. So I'm sitting there at this table, and my husband's, sitting next to me, and he's looking at me like, side eye. He's like, "What the hell was that?" And I'm like, how sometimes you get stuck in a moment, something happens, and you're just like, I don't even know how to respond to this.
Frozen in time. Yeah.
Totally, totally frozen. So I don't really say anything. I think all I said at the time was like, no, they're fine. The girls are great. They're good. And they were. Turns out several years later, like high school and college, as it often happens, that's where issues, depression, anxiety, those things tend to surface. And they did in my kids too, just like anybody else, but not at that time. So as soon as she asked the question, then she was on to something else. So we never kind of went back to it. I never really clarified it. Then she took off and left. And my husband and I are just kind of sitting there with our mouths hanging open, like, what the hell was all that? So the next time I saw my mom, which I think was the next day, I didn't make a beeline to my mom and say, I just had this conversation. What is going on that I don't know? It wasn't like that. It didn't start me thinking, what is it that I don't know? That didn't happen. But somehow, subconsciously, something was percolating in my brain, because the next time we were together, we were sitting and we were just talking, having lunch. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we start talking about my dad, which is totally common. And without even realizing I was going to say anything, I just said, was Dad depressed before he died? And she looked at me, she stopped and hesitated, only because it was nothing I had ever really asked her before. I had no reason to. She didn't hesitate. She said yes. And that just got us kind of talking a little bit about the stress he was under, from work and family. His family was very tough. And then before I knew it, I had no idea it was going to come out of my mouth until it was hitting my mom in the face. I said, "Did Dad take his life?" And she said yes. And neither one of us was prepared for that moment. We're talking 35 years after he had died. Not that you ever stop grieving someone, because you never stop grieving someone. But you go through the ebbs and the flows of grief, and you get to a point when you're, 35 years out from losing somebody, even if it's your parent, where it's assimilated into your life to a degree, and you live with that. So I was right back at minute one, day one. It felt like it was just happening all over again. And my mother
And
had...
you're also grieving him from an adult lens now, and now a parent lens as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, at that time, I had been married for 20 years. Our girls were going into high school, junior high and high school. And I had
Were you older than
different...
he was at the time?
That's a really interesting question. I was exactly the same age as my father when he died, to the penny.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. It was definitely a time. That's for sure. And everything just kind of, blew up from there, in the sense of, re-grieving it and dealing with a part of it that I didn't expect. I mean, obviously I didn't expect any of it, but the one piece of it that was so unusual was that my mother had kept this secret for 35 years. She had not just from me. My mother had never spoken a word about it to a living soul in 35 years. Yeah. So that's what changed things for me. It was at that point that I shut down. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't, for such a long time, there was just this surrealness about it. This can't be happening. There's no way. And when I asked her, she said, no, he left a note. But she had read the note. And I was a 10-year-old, very inquisitive kid. She was absolutely dead to rights sure that I would someday find this note that my father had written. So she said, I can't have that in the house. There's no way. So she went in the bathroom, read it one time, ripped it up, and flushed it down the toilet. Wow. Mm-hmm.
What did that do for you?
Yeah. Oh, what part of it?
To learn this. I guess all of it. How did you view her? How did it affect the two of you? What happened with that?
So I get a version of that question a lot. And a lot of people, somebody just today asked me, Did I feel deceived when my mother told me the truth? No. I did. Correct. Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt. I felt nothing but gratitude. To this day, this is like, we're now like, I think 11 years out from that day when I found out the truth. There has not been a single day since I found out the truth that I have not felt the deepest sense of gratitude for my mom. I was a 10-year-old kid. My dad was my hero. He was my best friend. I was his sidekick. I was an only child. And I didn't know which end was up when my father died. So to think, like, with my adult brain, thinking back to when I was that little girl, I remember the kind of devastation, like life altering, frozen in time. You don't think you can even keep yourself breathing. That's how deep the hurt is. I can't even imagine if a suicide had been layered on top of that loss. I honestly, like, I don't know if I could have made it. I really don't.
Well, and also, like, how are you supposed to even, we can't even comprehend death at that age, or this one,
No.
realistically. So, yeah, I mean, adding that onto it, it does seem like, a relatively unnecessary detail.
Yeah.
For that part of you to learn.
Right, exactly. And all my mother felt in that moment when it was very much a split-second decision where, she finds this note, she reads it, she realizes the implications if she goes ahead and tells me, and right there in that moment decides she's already, so I was at day camp and I would come home every day on the bus. I was like 3 hours away from coming home. And everything had to happen. They had to come and they had to take him, and they had all the arrangements had to be made, and family had to be called. So my mother in that moment just thought, I have to tell her that her father is gone forever when she gets off that bus this afternoon. I can't add a suicide on top of that. There's no way I can do that to her. And then it became, so I was 10 years old. Then I was going to middle school and high school and college and getting married. And then it was like,
when's a good time?
There's no good time to drop that bomb.
No, there really isn't.
No.
Yeah.
No. So she just let it go. And it's funny too, because she did tell me that day I made 2 promises to myself. And ironically, she kept both promises. The first one was, I can't tell her the truth. I can't tell her this because it will destroy her, it will shatter her, it will change her life in so many ways. But she also said the second promise was, if I ever asked, in the back of her mind, she's like, why would she ever ask? Like, there's no reason. But if she ever asks, I will never lie to her. So ironically, she kept both promises.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what that must have done to her all this time too.
Yeah. My mom is just a remarkable human. She's just, I don't know, she's just not from our world. She's just, you know what I mean? She's just like next level amazing and grounded and just loving and present and all those things. And I mean, you asked me a little while ago, and I don't think I answered it. What did it do to our relationship? It brought us, my mom has been my person forever. She's my best friend in the world. She has edited every word I've ever written for every book or any body of work I've ever done still to this day. She is my biggest fan. My confidant, everything. And it brought us closer even than I think either one of us could ever have imagined. Because for me, not only did I not ever feel any anger or resentment toward her from the jump, like never a second, but I felt so grateful to finally now be able to be there for her, to hold that space for her that no one had ever held for her before, because she had never spoken about this before. So we've been in this long, I think like 11-year long conversation that I'm sure will probably never end. And it's beautiful. I mean, she's actually thinking about potentially going to therapy now as an 86-year-old woman to be able to just talk. She's been on podcasts with me. I haven't talked a lot about this yet, but my next book's coming out like late winter, early spring. And it's a story about losing my dad twice. And she's actually featured in the book. She contributed to the book. So there's it's just brought us together in so many beautiful ways.
That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd imagine many people would have a different kind of reaction
Yeah.
to that, right? Like feeling deceived, feeling lied to repeatedly, even lied to by omission, right? Some level of betrayal. How do you conceptualize the difference for yourself? Or do you have advice for people who are struggling with this resentment or disdain that they can have for somebody to not tell them, to not volunteer this information?
I mean, I can really fully understand and appreciate why somebody would feel that way. I mean, it would be, I've had this conversation 1,000 times with my own therapist, and I keep saying to her, God, I hope there'll never be a day when all of a sudden I'll wake up and be bullshit at my mother. Like, but I can't imagine, you know what I mean? Like, I could wait for the shoe to drop. I can't imagine that because I know myself and I know how I'm wired and I know what my reaction to all of this has been and how consistent it is. So that's not an issue that I have to deal with, but I get it. Like, I understand why somebody would be angry or feel left out, feel hurt. I mean, I think the only thing that I do think about from time to time, and I have talked about with my therapist from time to time, is I've always been the kind of person who kind of wants by nature to be like involved in the thing. If there's like a thing, if it's a family thing, I always have needed to know like what's going on, make sure everybody's okay. I have this like hyper vigilant side to me, and I'm sure that I know that it comes from losing my dad like that. And I mean, well, losing him suddenly as a child. Obviously, I didn't know it was a suicide as a kid, so I didn't grow up with that in my brain. But that hypervigilant side has definitely come on stronger in the last 10 or 11 years, and I'm sure it's because of all this. You know, I would just say to anybody who is struggling, if they are upset or resentful, I would say just give yourself and give especially the person who maybe that's directed at, give them a little bit of grace, because for sure they have some motivation, some heart-centered motivation around not telling the truth. It's not to be deceitful. It's not to keep something from you as a way of like keeping you out of the loop. It's a way of protecting you for whatever it is. I mean, I've had people reach out to me, people who know my story, who don't know me personally, who have reached out to me about similar situations where like their partner had taken their life, and what do I do about my child? How old do you think my child needs to be for me to have this conversation? I said, that's such a personal conversation. And do you think my child will resent me if I don't tell them? I said, look, all you can do, your child better than anybody. You know the circumstances better than anybody. And there's never a right or I guess a wrong time to share that kind of information. Like if you're leading with the intention of protecting your person, then you have to be given a little bit of grace, I think, for doing that. But it's a lot to reconcile with. And there's no easy answer, I guess, is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. And are you open to a disclosure on my end?
Yeah, please.
4 years ago, almost to the day, last week, my husband had a full plan to take his life.
Oh my God. Okay.
And I mean, it is something that, of course, we're still working through and all of this, but all that really came to my brain, and not so obviously he didn't do it.
Thankfully.
I walked in the front door, and yeah, thank God, thank him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I walked in the door, and he said that he looked up and just saw me and was just like, I can't do this. We have two young boys at the time. They were 1 and 4. And he, and he didn't. And so, of course, he was just like, this is what I was going to do. Like, you can't trust me. Like, I can't trust myself. And like, here's where I'm at. Like, I was about to leave as soon as you got home to go and do this. And there's that whole experience. And during that time, all that was rattling in my brain was that my kids' lives were going to be defined by how they lost their father. And it never occurred to me to not tell them. And I can see why that would have been a much more protective thing. That like it felt like at the moment, and of course this is something that we will talk to our kids about. My husband is now 4 years sober from alcohol, so that of course this helps. And we talk about the fact that he doesn't drink alcohol, and my boys know that. And there's still that like when we are talking about them being at such a ripe age, I know that I wouldn't have told them like that, like how aggressive it is and all of those details about it. And I can't imagine them getting to a point where I wouldn't have volunteered that, but I don't even know what I would have told them. And so this conversation, like it just rattles kind of like in my brain, like I'm hearing echoes of like the conversations we were having around then, the way that I was viewing it. And I do see that. I can imagine that from your mother's end of being a deeply protective thing where your life won't be defined by that. You won't question your worth or your relationship with him or the impact that you had on his life and vice versa. And it's really what I think is one of the hardest parts about suicide and about self-harm in general is that we, the survivors of it, the grievers of it, we tend to internalize it. And we feel abandoned, and yet we forget that they had to abandon themselves. And it really does just like it does create so much of this inner conflict of my worth and my value and all of this. And so I'm just kind of sharing that out loud. I don't really know where I want to go with it. It's profound.
Yeah, I first of all, kudos to him for knowing that something was wrong and for stopping himself in that moment and for getting sober and for doing the work. Like I'm so grateful for you and for him and for your boys that he's here and hopefully he's in a better place than he was at that time. And kudos to you for sharing it because like that's the whole point. Like that is the reason why I share my story, why I started this podcast, why I'm doing whatever work I'm doing in the world. That's why it's to create safe spaces to have these conversations. Like I love the fact that you felt like in this moment you could share that for whatever the reason. And I think I know what the reason is. The reason might be that no matter how bad something is in the moment, you're only in that isolated moment for a period of time. It's not always going to be the way that it is in that moment when it's so desperate and it's so hopeless, And the other thing that I think is even more important is that we don't think anyone else is out there. We don't think anyone else understands. We don't think people aren't taking their lives because they don't want to be with their families or their spouses or their partners or their kids or living anymore. It's not why somebody does that. They do that because they can't handle the pain that they're in. It doesn't have anything to do with the people in their life. And I think you sharing that and kind of disclosing that, being brave enough to do that, it speaks to that. Like we have to be talking about the fact that it wasn't because he wanted to leave you or your family or your kids. It was because he was just suffering. And thankfully we live in a world now where people are having this conversation more openly and in the mainstream, and people can say, look, I'm really not okay. I don't know what to do, but I'm not okay. My dad, unfortunately, lived in a different time. He lived in a world that wouldn't talk about any of this, where like ironically, it came out probably 5 or 6 years after I discovered the truth about my father's suicide, that his entire side of the family knew all along. And they didn't want to say anything about it because they were a very well-known family in the community. They owned a lot of real estate. They were, pretty prominent, and they didn't want the optics that were attached to it. So there you have it. So they never said a thing, which ironically, they honored my mother's decision to not say anything, thankfully.
Right.
But it was for all the wrong reasons. It was because they just didn't want to tarnish the family name and all that. But
such a deep misunderstanding.
Yeah,
it's such an experience.
It is. It's a profound one, and it's just so unfortunate because I think that if people were not so fixated on the optics of it, people would understand the real kind of pain that people are in and the real intention behind taking their life. That it's not it's an escape from the pain, not from the people or the community or the life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is a hard thing for us to kind of wrap our head around, right? If we've never been in that position, if we've never suffered in that way, it does seem so impractical, so unrealistic that there would have to be this reason, right? And I can't say that I didn't also process through that of like, was there anything that I did that contributed to it? Was there, like naturally, I think that there is kind of that. And thankfully, because my husband's still here with us and he is doing the work and he is active in his sobriety, there is these conversations that we have often, and he will be actually coming on the podcast here to talk about that with together. And we're going to talk about what that experience was like for both of us. And there's so much more of that that I had been previous to that so quiet about his drinking. My family, my mother and my sister and my brother, like we are so incredibly close, and they had no idea. So when all of this happened, of course it shocked me. And I smelled booze on his breath and he had relapsed. And so like there was that I was like, okay, like there's something here, but at least I knew something, right? My whole family was just like, we never saw him drunk, and it's like because I hid it. Because anytime we were all around and something was happening, right? Like there was like this shame that was associated with it. And it became kind of that. And we had lost my uncle to suicide when I was 13, 14 or so, back in 04, 03, 04, or 05, around there. And there was like, we experienced the shock, but not what to do about it. It was a lot of the language was like, how could he? Right? Like it was a betrayal to us because we just didn't understand it. And then we fast forward into this, and yeah, I mean, it does kind of give those optics. There is that part that's like, wow, like there must be something going on for them. And, it makes it more of this melodrama instead of somebody who's really struggling and suffering within some of their internal experience. And it's their freedom. It's their only escape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, and I talk about this a lot, and I think it's relevant to this conversation, the whole belief system that I had around suicide from a super young age was always that suicide was a selfish act. And it was nothing that my parents instilled in me. I don't know where it came from. I think it was just
It's a narrative though. Yeah.
It is a narrative. And I mean, I was 10 years old. It was the late 1970s. And so I'm a multiple suicide loss survivor. I've obviously lost my dad. And 4 years ago, last weekend, we lost one of our closest childhood friends. Like we all since we were like 8 years old, lived together out of college, like in each other's weddings. And he very suddenly took his life 4 years ago. And the year before my father passed away, my cousin took his life. He was 18. He lived, I don't know, quarter mile up the street from me. And that was the first experience I'd ever had with a death in the family. And it was the first experience I'd ever had with suicide because my parents were pretty open at the time to tell me like his brain was not a healthy brain. He was struggling emotionally, like the best way that they could. They really did. And I give them a lot of credit at that time for doing that, not only because of my age, but just because of the time that we were living in the world. But I knew that was a suicide and just formed my own little 10-year-old, 9-year-old opinion about it and just held on to that. And then my own father died, but I didn't know it was a suicide. Flash forward to me being 45 years old and finding out it was a suicide. I was now a grown woman who still believed pretty firmly that, quietly in my own little heart, it wasn't like I was going around talking about it, but I felt like it was a selfish act. And then all of a sudden I was a suicide loss survivor. Not that I wasn't with my cousin, but I was with my father, which is just, when it's a parent, it's like a whole next level experience. So it was only when I really just kind of was devouring everything I could possibly get my hands on. It's like video, like thank God for YouTube and things like, the internet, to be able to just understand what other people had gone through. And I was just eating up every single thing I possibly could about like that mindset and what is somebody feeling and thinking. And it was like an instantaneous shift almost overnight when I really, I dawned on me, it's an illness. Mental illness is an illness. Like, would you ever think that someone who died from cancer or heart attack was selfish, or got hit by a car was no. Like, why are we applying that thinking to someone who has mental illness, which is also beyond someone's control in so many cases? And then it was like the switch flipped, and it's been flipped ever since. And everything about my belief system and the work that I've done as a result of it has totally changed.
I mean, I think it's incredible, and what you're doing to give life to this, right? Like in the same way that I was raised with this being like a shameful thing. It's secrecy. You don't show cracks in the family dynamic, right? Like there is a lot of that. And that's of course where my husband and I took that stance of like, no. And we called up every single person, every close family member, every close friend, and we told them everything.
Good for you.
Because that was what we needed, and then of course then we learned about the ripple effects, that a distant friend their partner had been contemplating it, and it gave them, strength to voice it and advocate for themselves and seek the treatment and all of this. And so the fact that you are doing this on such a large scale and creating the Help Hub to ensure that exists for people is incredible.
Thank you.
It's incredible. You're turning your crisis into a path.
Hopefully that's the intention. That's definitely the intention. I'm trying. I really am trying. And, I mentioned that I just launched a podcast about 6 weeks ago. It's called The Survivors. And it's a little bit unique in the sense that, first of all, I don't necessarily know that there are lots of podcasts out there that are focusing specifically on suicide loss and that very nuanced kind of grief. But I'm aligned. I have a partner, co-host, and she is already, she bites off a lot, but she can chew a lot. She's very accomplished, and she's already got an award-winning mental health podcast called Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. And her name's Gretchen Schoser, and so she's an attempt survivor, and I'm a loss survivor, and we're both mental health advocates. So I was a guest on her podcast earlier this year, and we just clicked to such a degree that we immediately were like, okay, well, what are we going to do together? Like, we have to figure out some way to collab. Let's do something together. And then, of course, ironically, she's already got this crazy successful podcast, and she's like, let's do a podcast. Okay, let's do another podcast. Right. And so, but we have such a unique viewpoint and lived experience as two different kinds of survivors that can speak to kind of both sides. And I'm also a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project, and 988 certified Lifeline counselor. So like, we've got all this experience around this topic. And so we want to create, look, there are, this is a crazy number. Whenever I say it, it hits me every time. There are 92 million people in this world every year who are in some way affected by a suicide loss, whether you have made an attempt, whether you have lost someone, whether you know someone who knows someone who's lost someone. For every one person who dies by suicide, 135 people are affected by that loss. So you do that math, and you're talking 92 million people a year in this world are somehow dealing with some aspect of this. And if you aren't yet, you will be. So we wanted to create a community so that we could kind of capture all of these people and say, we're here to talk the talk and to have the conversations and to be open and to be, vulnerable and transparent. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And it's, you're also humanizing this experience, right? Like there is that it almost feels like so far away from what we're supposed to talk about. And it does feel the whole concept of suicide, it fundamentally goes against what we're taught we're here for, right? And so there is like this taboo behind it, and there is just this like really hard thing to wrap your head around the concept of it and to imagine what it would be like to actually be in that position. And it's incredible that you guys are doing this in a way that you ladies are doing this in a way that is approachable, and you're also making it more normal. Right. Well, that there is this whole side that like, are you guys getting pushback that like you might be glorifying it or like anything like that? It's like the old school, like don't ask anyone if they're suicidal because you might plant the idea when like really it's living in there if it's there already. Like,
right. Well, the fallacy with that whole mindset is that the truth of that is and I'm speaking like as someone who's on crisis lifelines right now, if you mention suicide, if you acknowledge that someone is considering suicide, what you're actually doing is helping that person to avoid making that decision. It has been proven time and time and time again that by addressing it and by calling it out directly, that you're actually reducing the risk of that person taking their life. You're not putting ideas into someone's head. You're validating the feelings that are already in that person's head so that they can now understand that you're a safe place, that you can be there as a resource, that you can help them navigate through wherever they're at right now. So it's such a huge misconception that's like a bad thing. Well, it's like, look, there are all these platforms. Like, I'm so pissed at TikTok right now because TikTok will not let you say the word suicide without shadow banning you. And it's such bullshit because it's feeding into this taboo stereotype. It's like, have the conversations and be educated enough around the subject to understand that when you talk about it, it reduces the likelihood that someone is actually going to act on that. But there are still places and spaces in the world where they're trying to limit set this kind of conversation. And therein lies the problem. Like, how do you normalize something when everyone is still working so hard to make it taboo?
Right. Or they're like, I was having a conversation actually this past weekend about this, that they were saying that like the word is just so aggressive. And it's like, well, fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to make it cute? It's not.
Right. It's not a cute word.
We're not going to put a PR spin on this shit. Like, this is heinous. This is terrible. And this is what we're trying to do. This is why we talk about it. It's a very odd thing. And then whenever something happens, right? Like, even though my husband didn't complete, there's still those same narratives and people just trying to be kind and considerate and loving, right? Of like, wow, we had no idea. If only we had known, right? Well, here's how you can know is by fucking talking about it.
Exactly.
Here's how you can know. Like, this is what this is.
Yes.
And so I love that you're doing that. And so are you at all concerned within the whole podcast sphere of using the term? Is there any sort of concern about how people will find you, whether, anything like that?
No. Look, I mean, right now, in terms of, kind of flagging certain words like suicide, right now, I only know of that one platform. I only know that TikTok is a little funky about it. So there are kind of ways that you can circumvent that, but no other issues anywhere else. I mean, I'm hashtagging the shit out of it everywhere I can. And look, I mean, that's how do you change a perception? You change it with the language that you use to identify the thing. So I talk a lot about how the mental health community as a whole is really pushing back hard on word choice. Like, we don't say committed suicide anymore. We should not be saying committed suicide anymore. And I'll tell you why. And I'm sure you already probably know. Because when you think about and isolate the word committed, it doesn't have a great connotation. Commit a crime, commit a sin, commit some kind of immoral or illegal act. And so right from the jump, all of a sudden, it's like a negative. It's a taboo. It's stigmatizing the person that you're talking about. And that's unfair.
And it's villainizing them.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So at the very grassroots of all of this work that we're all trying to do, it kind of starts with, how do we even talk about the thing in the first place? And when we talk about the thing and give the person who we're talking about, who either attempted or who completed, we give them the dignity that they deserve. We just say they attempted suicide, or they tried to take their life, or ended their life, or died by suicide. And we just cut out and kind of bury the whole committed suicide phrase so that we can move past it and create a culture where all of a sudden people are talking about it in a healthier and more productive and less stigmatizing way. And then that's how you start to really like chip away at that stigma. So we're doing a lot of that, putting a lot of that out there, and having lots of deep conversations about the importance of that and the value of that. And so, look, we're at the end of the day, we're really just trying, both of us, to take the lived experience that we both have and put it in a place where the people who need it the most can find it and can benefit from it, and that together we can just really kind of shift the culture.
Yeah, I hear that. I work primarily in anger management, right? And so what we end up learning, of course, is that anger is the action, right? Like, well, it's the emotion, right? But it's more of the solution to the problem.
Right.
And in the same way that we talk about my husband, he introduces himself as an alcoholic. Are you an alcoholic, or are you a trauma survivor with poor coping skills? Right.
Okay.
So there's really kind of this kind of mindset that I really want to start taking when we talk about this, is that maybe they didn't die by suicide, they died from depression. And kind of taking away the shock and awe of what the solution was, as opposed to what the problem itself is. Right. And so what's your thought there?
All I can think of is attack the problem, not the person.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're so right, because suicide is the byproduct of mental illness. Depression is the byproduct of mental illness. And when you go to the root cause, it's that's
where we're at. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you look no further than that to understand where it all comes from. And then in doing that, once you recognize and validate where it all really actually comes from, then that whole myth of it being somehow immoral or somehow taboo, it just dissolves. It's gone. Like, I know myself, I mean, maybe I'm an exception to the rule, but I know that when I first really truly understood the notion that mental illness is an illness, and like thought about it in those terms, like it changed everything for me. It was like an instantaneous mind shift for me. And I can't say that is likely to happen in that way to everybody, but for me, it really did, because it was like a cut and dry thing. It was like, well, wait a minute. Like I would never hold it against somebody who died from cancer, or somebody dropped dead and God forbid had a heart attack. And would you ever hold something against that person? How could you do that? So why are we doing that with mental illness when it's another illness?
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's really just something that anger feels better than sadness. And sometimes it just makes more sense, right? Like, we lost my father to cancer.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And it really is just like, every so often I'm just like, ugh, like, you knew something was wrong though. Like, you felt pain for a really long time and you didn't go to the doctor on purpose and you ignored it, and we could have caught it. And, there are those types of things, but really that's just grief. And like, that's just the grief that I have and the love that I didn't get to show him and the time that we lost. Yeah. So I think it's more so around that when it is such a sudden thing and it is perceived like a choice, even though it isn't necessarily, there is that part that I think it feels better for us to villainize them than it does to empathize with them and have some compassion for them.
Most definitely. I mean, look, these expressions, whether they're expressions of anger or frustration or denial, they're all just versions of grief. It's just how, they're and it all just traces right back to love. Grief is love.
100%.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. So tell me about the Help Hub.
I love talking about the Help Hub.
Tell me
everything. It's so much fun. So the Help Hub was not even a thing. It was not anything that I had ever envisioned. It was the most organic of organic things that happened. I just had kind of a generic lisasugarman.com website that was just, the place I put all the content that I created. And little by little, the more I got involved in mental health advocacy and getting involved on crisis lifelines and as a grief counselor and things like that, it became more and more clear to me, number one, that people need resources. And number two, I felt very inspired to just throw as many resources on my website as I possibly could. So I just started accumulating and vetting all of these mental health resources. And the way I describe it is that it was like a 27-mile long list that had no structure at all. It was like all these great resources and websites and crisis support resources, and they were just there in like a completely random and chaotic state on my website. And so finally I just one day took a look at it and said, this is like so unwieldy. How does anybody even navigate? Like, how do you even know what you're looking for? So I deconstructed it a little bit, and this was about a year ago, and I took a look at it from kind of a distance and said, okay, well, what do I need here to give it some structure? Okay, well, what if I categorize it? Okay, well, how would I categorize it? Well, we all deal with the same types of problems and issues and situations, like grief and loss and suicide and depression and mental illness and wellness and all of these things. We all deal with them, right? It doesn't matter where we are in the world, what our gender is, our religion, our status in the community. Like, we're dealing with the same stuff, but the way that we deal with it is very different based on what community we're in. Like, somebody in the queer community is going to deal with whatever they're dealing with in a very different way than a veteran might, or the elderly might, or someone in the BIPOC community, and so on. So I kind of tried to identify bigger populations and then put everything into buckets, really. And little by little transformed my resource page on my website into what I called a hub, a resource hub. And it ended up having, I don't know, like 16 different categories. And you click on that category and you find the very specific help or resources that you need that supports your community. And little by little, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I felt like it was important to add tools to that hub so that if you're, for instance, having a grief attack and you've never had a grief attack and you don't know what the hell's going on, maybe this information sheet that I have that gives you some exercises and some explanations and some strategies to cope can help you through that. Or let's say you know someone who's struggling emotionally and you're afraid to ask the hard question, like, are you thinking of harming yourself or killing yourself, or you don't know what to say? I give you the language to have that conversation. And then depending on what they say, I give you the language to help support them, or what not to say to someone who's just lost somebody, or what to say to someone. So all these different things. And so when I developed this resource page, finally one day I was just talking to my husband about it, and I was proud of it. Like, I was proud that it was a great little resource section. I realized, like, this is the essence of my website now. Like, I don't care as much about the content, the stuff that I'm creating, in the way that I care about providing these resources to people in the world who need it. So I just took the entire website down to the studs, decided to call it the Help Hub, and redesigned everything. So now when you land on the Help Hub, you're right there in the middle of this big resource hub. I've got like a YouTube channel now that's dedicated to short form videos that talk about all sorts of different things, like anticipatory grief and why we shouldn't say committed suicide and all these topics. And the toolkits and all of my content is there. The Survivors podcast is there as well. So it's really just a big, giant platform of just the most inclusive and comprehensive mental health resources that you can find out there. And it just continues to grow and grow every day. And it's just a work in progress that hopefully will help people navigate whatever they're dealing with in the moment.
It's incredible. I mean, when these types of things are coming up, we don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of really shitty information out there. And so it's even better to know that this is, like this one-stop shop, this hub, this beacon, right? For people who don't quite even maybe know what they're looking for.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. That's a huge part of it. And the other part that I know from just the perspective of being on Lifelines all the time is that when you're in that state of mind, when you're dysregulated and when you're feeling hopeless and desperate and you don't know where to turn, your brain is not functioning properly. Your thought process is not clear. You're maybe more impulsive. You're in just a very, what could be considered a toxic headspace. So how do you even have the capacity, even if you know you need help? Like, how the hell are you going to go ahead and vet out where you should go and who you should like I don't want there to ever be any barrier to someone getting help, which is why the Help Hub will always be free. All the resources and downloads and shareables and videos and content is always free. But it's a way to ensure that help is a click away, that you don't have to think about it. You're like, okay, I'm a veteran. I'm struggling with my mental health. I need to know where to go. Click, 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 done. There you are. So that's the essence of it. And, it's really just to make those resources accessible to people. And, I just think of my dad, and I think of being able to provide help for people who were where he was. And I couldn't save him, unfortunately. We couldn't save him, but we can save other people. So
I mean, it's because of him that you get to.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
and
that I get.
where a lot
I
of
love
these-
that you said that. I love
Yeah.
that you said that I get to.
100%. It's now his legacy,
Yeah.
right? That he's not, it's not hidden, it's not buried. This is what this can do. And what you're doing with it is just such a beautiful thing. And it does kind of tie into your original part about parenting, right? Because parenting does add in so many more stressors and all of that then contribute to these types of things. So have you merged those two topics?
I have. I definitely have. I mean, there is a resource tab for children and parents and teens. So if you're a parent, for instance, and maybe you're struggling with your child is struggling, you don't know how to help them, there are resources on the Help Hub that will allow you to match up your needs with the help that's out there. So yeah, I definitely talk about things in terms of being a parent. And look, there's a whole world of stress out there where it's stressful just being a human every day and zipping up your pants and remembering to put on shoes. Like that's a lot. And then you factor in having a partner or having a job or having a family and being responsible for little humans, and it's a lot. So I feel like the more support there is out there that's accessible, that people can lean on, like that's the point, right? That's the whole point of it all. It's got to be a we not me mentality, and I think that's for me at the core of what the Help Hub is. It's how can we all uplift and support each other, and this is hopefully a place where we can do that.
It's incredible.
I hope so.
It's really incredible. I mean, these things, it's just so deeply needed. And a lot of the time we just don't quite realize what position we're in until, if we're lucky or fortunate, we get to be on the other side of. Right. And so there's just so much there. And I love what you're doing. I love how you're consolidating all of this information and you're giving them a place to go and also giving them the words to put to the experience.
I hope so. I really hope so. I appreciate that a lot. I mean, it's definitely the thing that I know that I will do as long as I possibly can. It's where I know I belong. It's the work that I want to do. It's the work that I think is so incredibly necessary. I mean, when you're talking about putting life-saving resources out there in the world to help all different kinds of people with all different kinds of problems, like what is there that's more being of service than that? And I was never someone who ever thought of myself as someone who wanted to just spend all my time being of service.
Yeah.
But I am. Like, you know what I mean? But I've found that this is definitely the place that I want to be, and I continue to develop great, beautiful partnerships. I've been absolutely blown away with how many of the major mental health organizations have endorsed the Help Hub, have added the Help Hub to their own websites and platforms. It continues to just blow my mind every day to see, who wants to collaborate and partner and just help me to elevate these resources. And that's the way it is. And I feel really grateful. It's like I'm looking off camera right now. I mean, you can't see it. No one can see it, but I can show it to you. I gifted myself this for my birthday, which is, if you're just listening to this podcast and not watching, I'm holding up a picture of my dad with me when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I really genuinely believe that we are doing this work together. Ever since I really started to build out the Help Hub, I've had the strangest, like most unmistakable sensation that we're doing it together. So he's right there. We're doing it hand in hand. Um, and I, in as much as a person can, I feel that he's pushing me along in this direction to do
I
these
mean, no
things.
doubt.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
How do you carry it all? Right, like from the hotlines to this content to the podcast to all of that. It's a lot of really heavy emotion, heavy experiences, heavy language. How do you balance it?
That's a great question, and I appreciate the question. It's a lot. Every once in a while, like my husband and I are big runners, and we always have to be kind of out in the world and active. If we're not running, we're walking or whatever we're doing. And I talk about this with him a lot, and he with me, because of course he and my kids are always concerned that since their mom and wife is an empath, that
Sure.
it's hard. And
You're
I'm
going to take
def
on so much.
all of it. And I've always been that person who feels all the feels, and I've always been attached to everybody's energy, no matter whether I want to or not. It's just how I'm wired. So I didn't know how all of this was going to be. They were super concerned that I was going to be on lifelines and dealing with people who were potentially, in imminent risk suicide situations, which I am all the time. And I don't know. It's just like I have a very strong self-care practice, and I feel and I also have got an unbelievably supportive family. My husband is just he has been there. I mean, we've been together since we were 17 years old. So, yeah. So he knows me and how I'm wired and kind of what I need, and he knows the signs, and he and my mom have been just absolutely at my six forever about all this, right there behind me to kind of, catch me if I fall or if I slip, and my kids have been nothing but supportive, and I try to know my limits. Like, I try to give myself that time away. I'm not away from these thoughts very often, because if I'm not writing about it, I'm on a podcast, or I'm doing my own podcast.
Oh, you're
or
living and
I'm
breathing this content.
like
Yeah.
all of it, all
Yeah.
day, every day. But I think honestly, it's because I feel like it's where I'm supposed to be. It's what I'm supposed to be doing with this thing that happened to me. And look, not everybody may feel that way, and that's everybody's personal decision. What you do with the story you have. We all have a story. We all have that lived experience. This is just what I'm choosing to do. And yeah, it's very, very heavy at times. And sometimes I'm just like, whew, that was a day, or that was a call, or that was a shift. And I just kind of let it be what it is in that moment. That's how I deal with it. I guess if that's answering your question, like
That is.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just like, if it's heavy, I let it be heavy. If I need to cry about it, I need to cry about it. If I need to like run out the door and go for a run or do a yoga flow, I do it.
Well, it sounds like you're not running away from any of it, right?
No,
Like the only
never.
way out is through, right? So
Exactly.
when these things hit, it sounds like you're listening to it. You're allowing for it to embody how it needs to embody, and then you also know when to put it down.
Exactly. Exactly. And look, it's not a perfect process. Like, there are definitely times where I'm like, I'll find myself in a little bit of a funk, and I'm pretty honest about that. And my husband knows. Like, he's been with me long enough that he knows the signs, and he honors that, and he's like, I'm here if you want to let it out. I'm here if you want to like punch me in the shoulder, if you want to squeeze my hand, if you want to go for a run, like whatever you want. And my kids the same way. So, I'm fortunate that I have a really beautiful support system, and and I have a lot of outlets, whether they be physical or, I've always got a journal with me. I'm forever writing something somewhere. And a lot of it sometimes is just to kind of purge what's in my head, put it in a place and process it. Yeah. Just put it somewhere. But, so far it all feels like it's the right thing in the right place at the right time. So I'm
Yeah, I
just
mean, even
rolling with
just
it.
from yeah, I mean, even just from looking at you, I can see that you manage it well, right? Like it seems like you carry it, and you've built that muscle, and you continue, like even when it's heavy, right? It doesn't seem to be weighing you down.
No, it's not. And if anything, I feel like it's just fueling me, it's inspiring me, it's pushing me forward in the good ways. And then yeah, exactly. And then I honor it when it gets heavy and I let it be heavy. And if I need to ask someone to help me carry it, I do. And that's the best I can do. So I always promised myself, and I promised my family early on when I first got involved with all this, I said, look, if aspects of this or all of this ever gets to be too much, I will shift gears and I'll find a different way to make an impact in the space. If all of a sudden I'm like, I can't be a crisis counselor anymore, which I don't envision, but if that ever happened, I would honor the need to step away, because at the end of the day, like, we have to take care of ourselves. And I'm not going to be good for anybody else if I'm not good for myself. So I just kind of have that in the back of my mind. And right now, this is where I believe I belong. And, as long as I can make an impact here and be healthy in my own head and my own heart, I'm here for it.
I mean, it's just so important too, right? Because when we're in these spaces, we not only practice what we preach, right? But there is this part that we have to, it's embodying it is so important. And just you sharing what that's like for you, and that you do have harder times and that you don't, it's not just like, no, this is great for me. It's not that you're humanizing the experience and also setting example, right? Like, you are living, walking embodiment of the example of how to do this work effectively, how to stay attuned to yourself, how to stay aware of what's going on, how to lean into your supports and trust them to hold up a mirror to you and show you some blind spots that maybe you don't quite see. And that's all part of the work, right?
Yeah. Well, look, we are on any given day, in any given situation, we're a work in progress. And I'm well aware of that. And I'm well aware that it all ebbs and flows. And I don't just mean the work that I do. I mean, life ebbs and flows. And to resist that is just to make it more difficult for ourselves, to kind of, I guess there's no other way to say it, like, embrace the suck sometimes, is to, like, okay, like, sometimes things suck. Sometimes things are hard. Sometimes things are heavy. And like you said, the only way forward is through. Or at least that's been my own experience, that if I have to sit in it for a while, however long, I do. And I don't just, I say it a lot, but I don't just say it. I do, like, I really do truly practice that. And that's the only way that I've been able to navigate all of this. And because I've been able to make it as far as I have so far, I believe that that's what I need to keep doing. I need to continue just honoring where I'm at with it at any given moment. And I don't go too far ahead. I can't. And no one can.
Right. Right. That's where suffering lives.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a bit of a pivot question.
Yeah.
This cousin.
Yes.
So my brain speculates wildly, right? And goes to, it was a slip, or have you, I actually don't have any to speculate. That's not helpful to anybody.
Yeah, no.
Have you talked to this cousin about the intention behind the statement, what they thought afterward, like what, any of that? Has there been communication about it?
God, I can't believe you asked me that, because you want to know something funny. So I do a lot of these interviews. I'm on podcasts a lot. I love it. I love the opportunity to share. I've been asked every question you could possibly imagine about this situation. No one has ever asked me that question.
I'm surprised at that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, no one has ever asked me that question. And the truth of it is, so it's a little bit complex. So my cousin does not live here. So this is the wife of my cousin. I just consider her. I consider her my cousin.
Dad's side, mom's side.
Dad's side.
Okay, so the side that knew.
Okay, so this is everybody knew. They knew. So I'm the youngest child, like the youngest cousin, I guess, on my father's side of the family. Youngest by like 15 years is the next oldest cousin. So I was like the baby. And my cousin, who kind of slipped and unearthed all of this for me, she is married to my cousin on my dad's side who was extremely close to my father. He was like, my father was like, he worshiped my father. So they're like a half a generation older than I am. So they're like approaching 70. And so she's been in my life as long as practically my cousin has been in my life. So they don't live in my hometown anymore. They don't live in this area. They're not in this part of the country anymore and have not been for a very long time. So we really have only ever, believe it or not, since all of this came out, I didn't talk about this for the first few years with anybody. And then when I did, it was just like immediate family, husband's side, mother's side, like kids, all that. It was years before we were in the same place to have the same conversation because I see them so rarely. And when I even told them originally that I knew and that it was a suicide, and I found out from them that they knew too, no one said anything. I was writing a book. They completely gave me their blessing. I don't remember if I actually even said to her, it was our conversation. That I don't think I've ever said it. Like, whether or not she listens to my podcast, if she listens to my podcast,
wow,
then
she'll know now.
Then she'll know I've been talking about this
wow.
for a very long time. Like, I've never mentioned her name, but anybody who knows my family or she herself would connect the dots and know that I'm talking about her. I mean, honestly, oddly, I'm very grateful that the whole thing happened because I've now been in a position of being able to support my mom and have these open conversations. And now I know this truth about my family history, and the trauma is inherited and genetics are inherited, and I was able to let my children know the truth so that if there was ever a point in time, which there has been, where my children were having issues with mental illness, that they could talk about it and those communications lines were open. So I have nothing but gratitude for my cousin for kind of, planting that seed. But we've never had the actual conversation like, hey, remember that time you bumped into me when I was with Dave and you said that thing about my dad? Like, never had the conversation.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. Episode 78 of Survivors. Cousin is going to be joining. Like, wow.
My phone's going to blow up. No,
right?
It won't.
I mean, there's that, right, of so much curiosity around whether it was a slip, whether there was a certain, thing that you had the right to know, like these types of, I'm just so curious about what that means.
I don't know why I haven't been fixated on that more. Maybe I think subconsciously, like now that you're bringing it up, I'm thinking to myself that, I do want to have that conversation. I do, like, to me, it was more important to just have the conversation with them at the time, like, hey, this thing did happen to my dad. I didn't know they knew. So in my mind, I was sharing this thing. And so that was really the conversation that I wanted to have. To have gone beyond that, like we only were together for a finite amount of time. They were in from out of town. It was our only chance to sit and talk. So it was, and it's not something I would ever do like on the phone or so. It was more of a priority for me to be like, look, I have to share something with you about my dad. And then all the conversation that happened, we just never got around to the whole like, hey, remember that time you said that thing to me? So eventually someday, like it's there in my brain. So when the time is right and I see them, there will be a conversation for sure. And I feel like I'll know the time and place for that to happen.
When it presents, for sure.
And then I'll call you right away.
Please do.
And be like, oh my God, remember? Here's the answer to the question.
Oh my gosh, please do. I'm so curious about
I
that.
know. Me too.
It's like these types of dynamics that I'm always really curious about. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. And what what a blessing for you, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is that kind of experience. Was it for Mom? Was she relieved?
So my mom went through a period of time. God, I just like you think about that moment where it all came out in like the parking lot of the restaurant we were having lunch in, and like so completely shocking that I was even asking the question, and equally as shocking for her to just come right out with the confirmation that it was true. In the very beginning, my mom was so upset with herself that she was sharing something with me that would cause me so much deep pain. And I kept telling her, even from those early moments, like, I get it, Mom. I knew instantaneously. Remember, I had already been married for 20 years. I had 2 teenage kids. Like, I got it, why my mother kept that from me. And I have never wavered on that part of it at all since. But for my mother, all she could think of was, I just dropped an atom bomb on my kid, and now it's going to rain fallout on her for the rest of time. So she just hated the fact that what she shared with me would ultimately hurt me. But over the years, she has come to this place of really truly understanding. Like, I am so grateful to her that she shielded me from all of that extra pain. And I am so grateful that it came out when it did, not only just so that I could understand the truth and so that I could do something purposeful with it, but so that I could understand what she had been going through and support her in that way, which was something that I have been unable to do. Like, obviously we both grieved together for 35 years, but it's very different grieving together when you think the loss was a one kind of loss, but then all of a sudden somebody else is carrying an entirely different, bag of rocks that they're not sharing with anybody. And that's, now I can help her with that. So we're at that point where she understands how grateful I am to know and how grateful I am to share it with her. And no, she loves to be able to kind of talk through whatever parts of it either one of us ever need to talk through, which both of us are just grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, what a blessing to learn this and to be able to talk about this when we feel equipped to carry it.
Exactly.
A lot of us don't get that opportunity.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And now we don't carry the load alone. Now we carry it together, and she talks about it with my husband, and we've talked about it with our kids. And so it's now this kind of this family, I don't even know what you would call it, just this family history that we all just are dialed into now, that we all support each other with. And it definitely makes it significantly easier to go through it, because there are moments where, it'll hit. Like, sometimes I'll have an interview, or sometimes I'll have a crisis call, or whatever it is. Like, don't think I'm not triggered sometimes, because I am for sure triggered often. But knowing that I could, like, go to my mom, like, Mom, I had a really hard shift. Okay, honey, let's talk about it. Or Dave, or my girls. So it's, look, there's strength in numbers, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a long time that she carried that, and I'm relieved for her.
Me too.
Right.
Me
Because
too.
I can just imagine, and maybe this is just tangential, I think of like doctor's appointments and family history and going, and that had to be repeated so many times. It's not like, hey, when you're 10, this is what happened, and then flash forward 35 years. It's like, no, this came up, that had to have come up so many times, and she had to carry that in order to protect you. And that, I can just imagine that weight being lifted while also adding on a different kind of weight, right, onto her heart.
Well, that's life, right? With the up, there's the down. With the good, there's the bad. And this is no different than that. But no, it's so funny, too. Again, something else that no one has ever considered in a conversation. You are on fire today.
Thank you.
On fire. So, like, she actually has said to me in the past, especially when I was younger, and your mom would still sit in with you when you were a tween, and she'd still sit in the doctor's office, and the doctor would ask you the questions, and your mom would sit there quietly. You're like, Mom, what do I say? What do I say? No, you can answer now. You're old enough. Yeah. So I would say, no, my dad died of a heart attack, and all of those things. And I remember the first time after I had really like told our kids and was really open about it, that I went in and had a doctor's appointment. Like, I vividly remember that moment with my doctor, and they're kind of checking your family history and, are you still on these meds? And did this still happen? And was there any cancer in the family? And it came to the question of my dad's heart attack. And I said, no, my father did not die of a heart attack. My father actually took his life. And that was a big moment. That was a big deal. And like filling out forms, things like that. Like, that's what I mean by triggers. Like, you just never know when something will come up. And so now it's just, there's nothing but just honesty and openness. And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of healing in that. When you don't hide anything, you're not carrying it either. So there's that perspective. And for me, it's been incredibly liberating to just be open about it. I don't feel any shame about it. I don't feel any stigma about it. I never really have. I never really have at all. And I don't feel like it defines my dad at all in any way. I just think it happens to be the way he died. And I think that's, could be said about anybody who we've ever lost to anything like that. Is the way that my dad died. It is not the way that my dad lived.
Yeah, I mean, deeply unfortunate.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was there anything, and if this is, of course, too much, please let me know, within his letter that alluded to what narrative he would want it to take?
No, and I appreciate you asking that. No. Sadly, it was incredibly brief, too brief. It was just a teeny little envelope that had my mother's name on it. My mother wasn't even the one who found it. It was my aunts who came, and they were kind of getting things organized and cleaning up, and he had passed away in a fold-out couch that we had in our family room downstairs. He had, obviously, the whole thing had been premeditated, and he was going to be staying home from work that next day to take my mom to lunch, and he was having dental work and was taking meds and was like uncomfortable, and so he wasn't going to work, but he planned on sleeping down in the basement because he had already orchestrated this whole thing. And so he had written this note, and they found it and they gave it to her. So they knew that it was not a heart attack, but they respected my mother. It was never discussed. And the note, paraphrasing, said something like, "I'm so sorry. I can't go on. I love you both." And he signed it, "Love, Jim," and that was the extent of it. Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to live with that why. That's one of the hardest nuances of suicide loss in a lot of cases. In some cases, people know, and people are very open about what they're doing or about to do or have done in notes and other, communication. But in my case, he left. No, there were no signs beforehand, and the note was very brief. But we know that a lot of it had to do with the fact that his family was just. His family was real tough, really, really tough. And nothing he ever did was enough for them. Even when it was the best that anyone could possibly have ever done, it was just not enough. And it was never about celebrating what you did well. It was always highlighting what you didn't do, or what you should have done, or what you could have done. And it was a tough way to live. So it had an impact, and we're pretty sure that was a big factor. But again, don't know for sure. We'll never know for sure. So that's a hard part. That part never goes away.
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing too that we also assume that they know why. Mm-hmm. And through my husband's work and everything that he's chosen to share with me, there is a lot of that that narrative is very tried and true within his experience. And what he was able to kind of conceptualize for me was basically this idea that he was never enough, and he didn't quite know how to overcome those narratives, right? Like his internal compass, his intuition, his self-narrative became someone else's. And at some point, he feels fraudulent, right? Like when I view him in such high esteem and I see what a beautiful, wonderful person and soul that he is, and he has these two beautiful, healthy boys, and there's an internalized sense of unworthiness, inherent unworthiness. And it becomes that we kind of trick ourselves. We lie.
Imposter syndrome is a real thing.
My God. Yeah,
it's so rough. Look, I've definitely had bouts with that in the past. Like, what am I doing here? What do I possibly
Who am I
to bring to the table? Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Like, why does my voice matter? What do I have to bring to the table? And then when I get in that thought loop, which I definitely have gotten into from time to time, like we're all human, we all get that way.
Yeah.
I definitely am like, no, knock that shit off. Like it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It doesn't matter what anybody else's impact may be. Like, stay in your lane. Focus on you. Focus on what you can bring, because whatever I'm doing is unique to me, and no one else is doing it. And whatever's unique to you, You're doing your thing. So, I mean, I give myself a lot of grace in that way, but it doesn't mean that I haven't had those moments where I'm like, oh, Jesus,
Yeah.
like, what am I doing here? And
Right. Right.
yeah,
And then pair those kinds of thoughts with not knowing how to combat them.
right.
And that's how we
Right.
end up.
Right. And I love something that you just said a minute ago, which I really honestly don't consider often enough. I don't think anyone does, that maybe the person themselves doesn't even truly understand the extent of the why. That's a huge part of it. Like, okay, you see the people who you think about, like the stock exchange crash, and when all those people were, jumping out of buildings because they lost everything, or someone's canceled with cancel culture, or whatever the case may be. Like, okay, you see things like that and you're like, okay, that's probably a pretty big reason why. But then there are other reasons, like the other people who are just living their lives, doing their things, and they're good people, and they bring value to the world, but they can't see it. Sometimes it's just a hard wiring where they can't love themselves, or they can't appreciate themselves. And it makes me sad. And that's why I just want, one of the things that my co-host Gretchen and I talk a lot about is worthiness. It's like, you matter. We need you here. Like, you have value. Like, it's important that you're here. You're not alone. Those are the things, those are the messages that we want to create. And like you and I today are creating a safe space for people to have this conversation. And it's, these are the spaces that we need to just make bigger and bigger and bigger until we live in a culture where anybody, anytime can have this kind of conversation, and it's just mainstream and it's acceptable, and nobody has to, flinch when someone starts talking about not being okay.
Yeah. I mean, preach. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you are. And I love that.
Yeah. It's a hard thing. Whenever those things come up, it almost feels like they took a secret to the grave. Forgive my crass, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it can feel. But that is also leading with the assumption that they knew too. Yeah.
You're right. And I think, and sometimes people do, and sometimes people just don't. They just, for whatever reason, like, look, life, at the end of the day, like, life is hard. Life is hard. I don't care how privileged you are. I don't care how supported you are. I mean, look, we can look at, all the famous people who we know, who we've lost, and you look at them and everyone says the same thing, like, they had everything. What could they possibly have wanted to leave for? But you just don't know what's in somebody's head and in somebody's heart, and the kind of toxic self-talk. Like, when we get caught, like, we all have thought loops. Every one of us has a thought loop, and it is hard. It's hard to change that. It's hard to battle that sometimes and rewire that. It's really hard. And I feel so bad for people who can't do it. It's just sad.
Well, and that's what you're doing, though. You're turning that empathy, that compassion, that helplessness into being helpful by giving them this hub, giving them this community, this platform, this voice, this, all of that, right? Like, that's what all of this is. And I'd imagine outside of that, it's certain people won't engage or click or like or sign up
That's
or whatever,
okay.
but they're seeing it anyway.
Yes.
And that
yes.
like little bit plants a seed where they at least know, oh, right, there was this one podcast I listened to this one time, and here's what I can do about it.
Yes.
It's incredible
yes.
what you're doing.
Yes.
And it's powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. It feels, all I can say is that it feels like it's the thing that I need to do. And so far the response to all of it has been so overwhelming. Like, that's what blows me away. It's the people who slide into my DMs, the people who like I know from my own community, who reach out to me, like, who are in my own community, who I may not know super well. Sometimes I do. And they find a way to reach out to me. And I've had people say, I have formulated a plan. I was done. And I need to tell you that something I read of yours, or something I watched of yours, or something I heard of yours changed that. And they like, what? I'm sorry, but like, what in life is more powerful than knowing that you have kept someone here? that something that you have put out into the world is the change agent or the catalyst for someone to not choose that outcome. And look, it's so funny, not funny, but ironic, I guess. I think back to like the first day that I was solo on the Lifelines. Like there's a really, really rigorous process for becoming a crisis counselor. With the Trevor Project, there's a lot of role playing, and there's a lot, tons and tons of information, and it's a beautiful process. Like I feel like I hold space now for people in a much better and different way than I ever did. But I remember the very first time I had my very first solo call, where you're never on a Lifeline alone. Like there are supervisors who are kind of in the ether while you're up there, and you can Slack them or you can ping them and get them to listen in on a call. But no matter what happens, you are the one. It's you, and maybe they're feeding you a little bit of info or resources or something, but you're the one dealing with it. It was my first solo call, and it was an imminent risk in process suicide call. And I remember before my shift, my mother had said to me, if you ever save one person, if you can help one person, every single thing, like everything you've done has been worth it, and you have righted the scales in some strange way. And the first day out of the gate was a 3.5 hour long imminent risk call, where I was very fortunate that I was able to de-escalate that person, and we created a safety plan, and they were so grateful by the end of that call that they said, I don't think I would be here if you hadn't been the person on the other end of the phone. And I just remember getting off that shift and just sobbing, calling my mom and just sobbing, and said, I remember what you said before I took the shift. That's what happened. And like everyone was so blown away, because like, what are the odds of that on your very first day? And so from that moment, I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's incredible. Lisa, you are incredible. Thank you so much for being here. I have so much awe and respect and adoration for you and what you're doing, and just the way that you conceptualize the world and your positioning within it is incredible, profound. I'm using all the same words, but they mean the same thing to me.
I just love and appreciate so much just the chance to be here. And this conversation has I just want you to know how much this conversation has meant to me, like what the questions you've asked have done for me, and things that I've now got in my brain that maybe weren't there, that I needed to be thinking about. And I'm so grateful that now, because of this conversation, I get to think more about these things, and they're only going to make me better at what I'm doing, and they're only going to make my impact on the world, hopefully, that much stronger. So appreciate you just for being so intentional about every single thing, and just being so damn sweet. I appreciate
absolute
it.
Pleasure. Quite literally my absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I can't wait to support this next book coming out. What's it called?
Well, I'm not allowed. My publisher is not allowing me to say. Let's just say that, without giving away titles which have not been formalized yet, and they will be very soon, let's just say that it is about surviving. It is about surviving. It's about losing my father twice in one lifetime. It's part memoir, and then I'm doing a lot of distilling down the Help Hub, because I don't want someone to just read a book about suicide and grief and loss. I want someone this is designed for people who have gone through this kind of loss, and now you have a story that you can connect to. Well, what do I do now? How do I navigate the after part? So I wanted to distill down the Help Hub so that those resources are in the book. I have a huge toolkit section online that people can get tools and infographics and language, and I want that in the book as well. So it's going to be something very unique, and it will be out after the first of the year. Titles will be out soon. I will also text you with the title.
Please
let
do.
You know what that is.
Yes.
Yeah. But I've been working on this for a long time. This project has taken longer than any other book I've written, and rightfully so. There's a lot of moving parts, and I wanted it to be I wanted it to be what it needs to be. So this is like moving on the 5th year now that I've been in this process, and it's crazy that it's already in editorial and we're almost done. So getting there.
Amazing. Good for
Yeah,
you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I cannot
appreciate
wait
that.
to read this, and I will be
can't
sharing the
either.
Help Hub far and wide.
Thank you.
It's so needed.
I appreciate that so much. I mean, tell everybody you know that it's out there, because we can't help people if we don't know they're hurting. So,
And they can't get better if they don't know where to go.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly. So grateful to you for that.
My pleasure, Lisa. Thank you. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Appreciate you.